Hello everybody and welcome back for my second video on my thoughts of the very famous novel David Copperfield by the great Charles Dickens. So I promised you a second video on David Copperfield and love. I'm afraid I lied just a little bit. This is going to be more like David Copperfield and marriage, which is pretty much the same thing, right? So marriage is a theme that I've realized from my research runs throughout this book. There are many married couples in the book, many marriages, and you get to see the inner workings of these marriages, and they're very different setup and they're varying levels of success. There's one particular marriage that I want to focus on in this video. I won't tell you which one. Two wonderful quotes in relation to the marriage. And these quotes have pretty much also been encapsulated in the philosophy of a current modern day writer and philosopher by the name of Alain de Botton of School of Life fame. I'm sure many of you know him, but if you don't, please check out the links. I highly recommend finding out more about School of Life and Alain de Botton and his very interesting thoughts on romantic love and relationships. So the two ideas, philosophical ideas that de Botton has that relate to David Copperfield are, firstly, how he believes that you will never marry the right person. And what he means by that is that there is no perfect person out there. That romantic love has given us this idea there is a perfect partner, but there never is. Whoever we end up with will be a mixture of good and bad, and we have to learn to appreciate the good elements of a person in a relationship and to basically put up with the bad parts, or at least tolerate them. One of the reasons he says for this as well is that de Botton has a theory that we're all crazy. Okay, so the partner you marry will be crazy, and that will manifest itself in certain facets of their character that are weaknesses. And if, by the way, you don't believe you're crazy, you are. And if you don't believe that, then it's probably because you're crazy, because crazy people don't believe they're crazy. That's why they're crazy. No. You're probably crazy, but may not be aware of it simply because you don't know yourself well enough. And de Botton's other piece of advice is that if you want to know in which way you're crazy, ask your long-suffering partner. That's the best way to find out about yourself is in a long-term relationship. Your partner will know your weaknesses and will know in which ways you sort of appear to be crazy. So that's the second part of de Botton's advice, is that therefore, in such a marriage, which is every marriage, great patience is required and necessary, that you need to learn to treat your partner as a toddler. Because with the toddler, we know they're not an adult. We expect them to be crazy and behave unreasonably and throw their food on the floor. And we're patient and we teach them patiently. And so de Botton asks us to remember that it's the same with our partner. Even though they appear to be an adult, there'll be elements of them, their weaknesses and their crazy parts, where they're no better than the toddler, and we have to learn to be patient with them and hopefully help develop them. So, as I said, there's one marriage in the book, two quotes that I wanted to focus on. I won't tell you which marriage, but I will tell you that the great Betsy Trotwood has the first quote. She's my favourite character in the book, as I mentioned in the first video. And the words that she has to say are to a husband who's just been married and is starting to have that horrible realization that maybe he's made a mistake and he's married someone who is too intellectually immature for him. And Betsy reminds her, she admonishes him and then says, beseeches the character to estimate her, his wife, by the qualities she has and not by the qualities she may not have. So again, feeding into this philosophy of de Botton that everyone is a mix of good and bad, and that we have to learn to appreciate the good in someone and be patient with the bad. And this point is sort of underlined later on in a conversation the husband actually has with the wife in question. And bear in mind that this wife is very childlike and seen as immature, and yet she utters these wonderful words, has this wonderful insight, which I think are the wisest words spoken in the book. So she asks her husband to think of her as a child wife. And she says specifically to him, and I quote, when you are going to be angry with me, say to yourself, it's only my child wife. When I'm very disappointing, say, I knew a long time ago that she would make but a child wife. When you miss that I should like to be, and I think can never be, say, still my foolish child wife loves me, for indeed I do. So yeah, wonderful wise words, because this woman has realized that her husband, that she doesn't meet the impossible high standards and infatuated image, perfect image of her husband. And she understands that and isn't ashamed of it, even though she tries to be this person. She asks him to be reasonable and to appreciate that there are elements in which he will be like a child and that he has to be patient with that. And yeah, work with marriage with those limitations. So I think it's wonderful words of advice. I should also, it would be remiss of me to say, to not add that Charles Dickens himself had a pretty unhappy marriage at the end of it. He didn't act very well in his marriage either. By the time that he was writing this book, he was no doubt reflecting on how he'd made a mistake with his own marriage. I've added a link in the description, please check it out. And he didn't perhaps act particularly well with his own marriage, but I don't think that should let us just detract from the wonderful wisdom that the characters in this book have on marriage. And so, as I said before, David Copperfield, great book to read, thoroughly recommend it. And as you read it, I think it's probably a good idea to reflect on your own experience of marriages, if you have one, or at least long-term relationships. So thank you again for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and no doubt I'll be back for more. Bye.